Take two.
Yeah.
Okay, we are coming to you live. I'm not going to repeat the same stupid opening.
Stop. You have to do the opening.
Okay, we are coming to you from HangCon 2025.
Woo.
For those of you who aren't familiar with HangCon, you're obviously not fans of anyone at this table. HangCon is the world's largest hammock event, and we are in our mobile podcast studio here at the event, and we have a very average,
Stop.
boring guest. I'm just kidding.
We have another very special guest.
We do
good.
have a very
So
super
good.
duper awesome special guest in the studio. What was your name again?
You know, it seems like every time we see each other, it's like, who are you? What's this? So thank you. It's good to introduce myself again.
Yes.
I think it's for at least the 10th time.
Yes.
So Derek Hansen, and it's actually really great to meet you, Chad. I think this is the first time we've met in person.
Yep.
So fantastic, and at HangCon. So how good is that?
Very fitting.
Yeah.
Very fitting.
So, for those of you that don't know who Derek Hansen is, he is basically the godfather of hammock camping.
Oh my gosh.
Forget
I don't know
about
that.
Shug.
No.
Forget about no. So Derek, well, actually, you tell them because it sounds way better coming from you than it does from me. Why do people know you? Why are you so important?
Oh my God.
Well, I don't think I'm that important, but you know, my journey with hammock camping probably started with a lot of people, you know, trial and error and experimenting. But this is back when we didn't have anything. So I collected. I actually started with just illustrating a lot of concepts for people because it was, you know, sometimes hard to visualize what's going on, and making that real for people was really fun for me.
Yeah.
But those that know hammock forums know that it's like it's a deep well of everlasting, you know, you just go forever.
Yeah.
And a lot of those illustrations would get lost over time, and so I kept reposting the same things over and over. Like, there's got to be a better way. Can't we just collect all these things? We tried different methods until finally I said, how about I'll make a book.
Yeah.
I actually didn't even want to write it. I actually reached out to other people that I thought were experts and knew the business.
And this was before AI.
There was
this
no
is
Chat
before.
GPT.
No. And nobody was interested. So I'm like, oh gosh, I got all these illustrations. I'll try it.
Now, at the time, what was like the hammock industry like when you were contemplating
man.
writing this book? Like, was it still pretty small and new, and that was why there wasn't much interest in helping with it, or what?
Yeah, I would say there was no industry. Well, we had Hennessy. So this is back in the early 2000s. So
Okay.
Hennessy was just emerging because, you know, people were taking them on through hikes and becoming more popular. I was just talking to Dutch too. We're like, I think the next guy that was really making stuff was Jacks Are Better. And so I got involved before underquilts were even a thing. We were trying the craziest things. Like we tried, as you can believe it, cardboard. You know, because people were like, well, what are the bums? What are bums like? Because we're looking at what's lightweight, what can pack down really small, what can insulate really
I got
well.
these pizza boxes over here.
Yeah, right? And it was crazy because, you know, in a hammock, people were trying to put in their sleeping bags and they're finding they're getting cold on their backs because, you know, the compression issue of insulation was a real thing. I think it was Spear who came up with, he called it a pea pod, which was taking a sleeping bag and wrapping it around the entire hammock, which was probably the first iteration. People tried that for a while, but, you know, it constricts the way you lay, makes it really hard to sleep in. And ultimately, I think it was Jacks Are Better that had the brilliant idea of like, hey, let's cut this thing apart and wrap it on the outside and open up that restriction. So yeah, the industry was non-existent. And you see that if those that have my first edition, there was a lot of experimentation. There's new, you know, things that are in there, but underquilts are starting to become a thing. But yeah, that's how it started, was just, hey, how do we help people think through this idea of hammock camping? To be honest, because, you know, hammocks have been around since forever, right? I have a little bit of a history because I loved getting into like, well, where did hammocks come from and why are they so cool? So, you know, back in the Yucatan Peninsula where, you know, Native Americans have been using hammocks forever. They still use them today as their primary sleeping, right? That's what they do. When Columbus came to the Americas and discovered it, you know, he was looking for whatever he wanted. The only thing he brought back legitimately that we use today is hammocks.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's cool.
And that's what changed. A lot of people think of hammocks in sailing ships, which is true, but that actually came from Christopher Columbus. So up to that point, hammocks were only sailors slept in berths, wooden boxes. They jostled around. When that changed with hammocks, that's where we see, you know, hammocks all the way through, honestly, World War II and the Korean War. My uncle, or grandpa, has one of these original World War II hammocks that are so cool.
Wow.
Anyway, they don't
That
use them
is
today,
cool.
but hammocks have been
You
around.
should have brought
History lesson.
I
Love
actually
it.
thought about that. I'm like, that'd be pretty cool if I
Yeah.
brought like an old canvas
Put it on display.
hammock.
that.
And
Well, I know
slept in it.
the Danish guys last year, they brought a hammock that was very similar in style to the Haven that a guy developed back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was super neat to look at, like just the engineering that went into it and how unique it was from what you see today. And it's
Yeah.
like some of those designs, earlier designs, are a lot more functional than some of the modern stuff.
Yeah, in fact, I did a podcast. In fact, I think it just came out today. That we were talking about the Haven hammock because you're right. Those early Navy hammocks, there were two designs. One was your regular enlisted hammock, which is kind of like the regular hammocks that we see today, gathered in hammocks. The officer hammocks they almost look identical to that Haven hammock, a box style spreader bar hammock that drops your head and foot. And it wasn't as
Made
flat
of like
as having-
canvas, probably.
Canvas, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what, they picked those materials because that's what was aboard ship. They could easily repair them.
Right.
Yeah.
The other, sorry, I'm getting well into the deep of
No,
Yeah,
this
I'm
is
loving
history.
it
This is
personally.
great. You're the guy.
It's education.
This is your job.
Yeah, I love
hammocks.
it.
So in the sailing days, they were multifunction because, they would wrap up the hammocks after they slept in them. And they slept in shifts because they were only like 30 inches apart between these hammocks.
Right.
They would wrap their hammock up. And when it was time for going into battle, they had it's kind of cool. They actually did these 7 half hitches to wrap up the hammock into this little bundle. 7 half hitches represented the 7 seas. They would take those hammocks onto the sides of the ship and lay them out, and that would actually capture the shrapnel.
Wow.
So when a cannonball would hit the ship and the wood would splinter, those hammocks would then protect from the shrapnel. So they had multi-use. These hammocks were great.
They can't do that now.
But
was gonna
today,
say,
our
not
You're
now.
throwing them the wrong way. Some of
Nylon.
these hammocks.
It's tearing
You're
open.
blowing a hole in it.
yeah, so you got to get the good hammocks.
Yeah.
Good
That's
hammocks.
right.
So yeah,
And durable.
they're pretty cool. Been around
So
a while.
Very cool.
on that same note, well, actually, let's get back to
Yeah.
the book.
I don't
part
even know if we've said
real
the
quick,
title
because
of the book.
The first book that you wrote was called
The Ultimate Hang.
The Ultimate Hang.
Yeah, it's always been the
And
Ultimate
then
Hang.
you recently, just this year, or
Yep.
2024, or 2025.
Well, it's the end of basically 2025. I finished
Okay.
it Christmas, and so this new edition,
Wow,
version
brand new.
3, is brand new, just came out, and a lot of big updates. Actually, I think the biggest one of those that are familiar with the original book was a nice 6x9 trade back, but very small. The second edition was huge. I mean, I basically wanted to. I want to
Oh, trust me, I know they're taking up
Yeah.
space on my
They are
shelf.
huge, but that was one of the big complaints too. Was I kind of like the small form factor. It's easy to hand out, and give to people, and so I took that to note and really did a big update to this book to shrink the form factor. First of all, I removed. I tend to talk a lot. You probably know that.
I hadn't noticed, honestly.
Yeah. So I actually cut out a lot of my own. I blab a lot about just stuff, and I try to just get to the nuts and bolts. So there's a lot of editing throughout the entire book, and a lot of new additions, like you said. Well, actually, I don't know if we've talked about
Yeah,
it yet.
if they don't know it's take 2.
On the uncut version,
Yeah.
The uncover. We've already talked about the change and evolution of all these hammock stands, for example, which we can segue into in a minute. But so those are some new things here. Hammock stands and all of the innovations there. ADV riding and how hammock camping has revolutionized some of those industries. So there's a lot of new stuff in here as well as new illustrations. But yeah, the Ultimate Hang version 3 just out.
hold that up nice and close.
There we go. For those that can
Yes.
watch the video.
Ooh.
Yeah, nice new cover.
We should put a link to it or something.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, we should get it to your site so they can order from
Yes,
UGQ.
Of course.
Yeah.
All these things will be happening.
I'm going to have an entire warehouse full of them.
Just enough to get through the inventory. Yeah.
Yes. So you are, again, for most people that don't know, you are the guru, the godfather of hammock camping, in my opinion.
Thank
and
you.
probably everybody else's opinion here. What is your experience like with coming to events now versus 5-6 years ago? Because for me, it's like it used to be you would come to an event and it would be nothing but hammocks on trees, and now
Yeah.
it's stands, hammock stands as far as the eye can see. And like you said in our uncut version,
Yes.
the Danish guys were like, what is with all these stands
Yeah, where's
everywhere?
the trees? That was
Yeah.
the
What-
first thing they said.
what's-
Where's the
what's-
trees?
Being that you're in this industry, how have you kind of seen that evolution of hammock stands, and how has that kind of changed the industry and kind of how people are interacting with hammocks now versus 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, what a change. I mean, hammock stands were kind of a thing that people had on their back porch, possibly, but in terms of like, oh my gosh, they're like 70, 80 pounds. Why are you gonna haul that around? You get trees everywhere. Right. So as the industry has changed from being kind of a through hiker led and driven industry to more of now we got people that are wanting to go to the campgrounds, because hammocks have become now to a point where like tents were or are still, right? Like, hey, I'm going to buy this off the shelf. I'm going to set it up. And so not only have we seen changes in the actual hammock designs, right? Like Hammock is a great example of this, where they've designed it intentionally to say like, hey, color-coded tabs and easy pull things, and just to make it simple. So it may not be the lightest, and that's not the point. The point is it's off the shelf. It's got everything you need.
I mean, there's people buying 10-person tents.
Yeah, right. So it's not about the weight, but ease of use. And I think that's where hammock stands have really come in too, is like if you come to a campground like this, there's trees everywhere, but it's also they're not always perfect. Right. And all the great spots have already been taken. So, and if you're like a vendor like we are today, this is your spot. And there are no trees, even though there are trees everywhere. We don't have a spot, and we got to set up a display. So there are certainly use cases for hammock stands, and for people that are just coming off their car and coming into a place. I think
I'm like, was it take one that we talked about
we can't remember.
That's
we'll just have to include it.
Somewhere we said something about, like, you get into a campground where it's designed for tents. How do you get to a place now where I've got to set up my hammock right here? So stands are making a really good comeback, and a lot of evolution to see those designs that are freestanding, or that are break down and put into your car really easy. And some can even be carried. I mean, no one's going to say like, oh, I'm going to go backpacking with this, but some can actually be carried very lightly. For sure. And I think in the future, I mean, there's one stand that came out years ago. Some of will remember the handy hammock stand, and I've got it illustrated in my book, but it's a very lightweight. It's a 2-pole stand that literally you could backpack with, but it's hard to find the technology now. It's getting better, right? With carbon fiber and other things that are just amazing. So I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to get there.
Now, one of the things that we've experienced, and it's, I'm sure we're not alone in it, is that we've gone to so many hammock events, but a big part of the problem is that we don't get to sleep together, right? There's not a lot of double hammocks on the market. There was some that kind of came out over the years, but never really caught on.
Yeah, I'm not sure the perfect one has really come out, because the Hammock, is that how you say it?
Yeah. Right.
They had us getting the double, and it wasn't uncomfortable, but it's just, it was hard to imagine sleeping. Like
us going to an event, we don't want to be like, if we're gone for 4, 5, 6 days, sleeping in separate setups under separate tarps, it's one of those things that we were no longer enjoying going to the events because we were missing out on that time together. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that somebody is going to come out with the perfect setup for us to get back to hammock camping. But that also comes back to the stands when Yobo launched the Hive.
Yeah.
That opened up the door for 2 hammocks on a single stand,
together.
Right.
Under one tarp. In 2 separate hammocks, and that's a big deal, because I know there's a lot of people that don't do as much. Hey, quiet down over there. We're trying to film a podcast.
That's Dave Canterbury, by the way.
Yeah, right.
You'll see him later.
Starstruck.
So that's something that for us caused us to kind of stray away from hammock events in general, because it was like, we don't have we're not going to show up. I mean, last year we showed up in an RV. Yeah. We've showed up to other events in tents, and plus also, I've had 3 hip surgeries, and that's contributed to some of my experience. And I've tried some different bridge hammocks, and, it's one of those things at the end of the day, like, I'll still hammock camp when I go on backpacking trips and by myself. But when we're going to events, there's just not been a super good solution. Now, in all fairness, we've not tried the Hive yet. We've not tried hanging 2 hammocks underneath it, but we're still separate, what I mean? Yeah. Versus laying, now we have a big fancy rooftop tent that with, a ginormous, huge bed in it that we're
I think
loving.
Events feel more inclusive to other sleeping options too, whereas before you kind of felt like, I don't know if I should do anything but a hammock because this is a hammock event. Now it's like, they're more like, if you have an RV, that's okay. If you have a tent, that's okay.
Last year, there was a running joke going on, like, did you guys see that the CEO of UGQ is rolling out of an
they
RV?
said that I grounded him, which was funny, to a tent, which I didn't. He had just had a surgery.
Well, that was at Machilligan at the Michigan hang.
And it started this joke.
We were hammock camping. We started out hammock camping, then we went to Walmart and bought like an Ozark Trail, $30 tent. And that's how we finished the event. But I had like a UGQ tarp over it, trying to hide it.
And it just became this thing, but I don't know. He was like a month or 2 off of a surgery, and Yeah, that's what really
the gathered
started
in
it.
hammock squeezing. You know, I've had
Yeah.
11 incisions on this hip,
Oh
so
my
like
gosh.
Yeah.
it's like feels like raw nerves on the outside
Yeah.
of my hip. So like if the kids touch it the wrong way, sitting on the couch or whatever, so like having that squeeze me, you know. Now I will say that the one hammock that I've had the best success with since my last surgery was the Majestic.
Yeah.
And there's no tight spots.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story.
Right.
I've done podcasts with him, so
So
go watch
really,
that.
if we can get
It's
a
great.
hive and use our Majestics, then I think that's
and
a
you-
solution.
But you've tried some of the other, like, I mean, double kind of hammocks have been around for a while, but to your point, have been tricky, like the Clark Vertex.
Yeah.
That was I think the most recent one we tried, I think, was that one where
Yeah.
it was like spreader bars on each end,
Yeah.
and there was like
Yep.
cup holders in the middle, and
Yeah, I don't know. We
But then
just
it came
can't get
down
it
to the
exactly
insulation.
right. We're so
The what?
different
Oh,
in
insulation?
height.
yeah. So the other aspect is that the double hammocks that we did find that were not a traditional gathered end style double end hammock, it was like, well, nobody's really making insulation for them. And
Yeah.
I'm certainly not going to buy somebody
No.
else's insulation.
Right.
So then it turned into, well, if we get this, then I got to prototype this whole new thing, trying to figure
Yeah.
out how we're going to keep ourselves warm. And
Yeah.
Well, those are the pros and cons, I think, that are tricky with a double or
Yeah.
what they call a dual layer hammock,
Yeah.
because you have not only laying problems, because essentially you always are going to have two cocoons.
Yeah.
And you're never going to, like, so the Vertex is really just two hammocks that are stuck together. Dutch came out, and Eno has another one that are just, a spreader bar for two separate hammocks to do exactly the same thing
Right.
under the same tarp. The Hive is another example of
Yep.
trying to bring it together, but you're always going to be there. You may not know this, but there's actually a very traditional, they call it the matrimonial hammock.
Really?
So this is actually something that was, again, back with the Native Americans in South America. They just create a huge hammock. So if you get let's say a 14-foot hammock, you can have two people stay in the same hammock,
Yeah.
and you're both laying in the same diagonal direction.
because it's giving you enough flat
It's like the
footprint.
one that we tried at that
Yes.
event that was similar to
Yeah.
that. We were in one and it was very
Yes.
large.
So there's only one hammock company that I know that sells it, and that's Ticket to the Moon, and it's called the Hammock. And it is enormous. I think
Wow.
it's like 20 feet long by 10 feet.
Maybe
and
they'll
then,
see
and then I
this
just have
and
to
they'll
make a
send
20
us
foot
one.
long underquilt.
Is there any
pros
chance?
and cons? No, I mean it was cool. Like I could get my whole family in there, but you
Yeah.
can literally have two people sleeping independently and comfortable. Now, can you insulate that?
Yeah.
No, not
Right.
easily.
Watch me.
I don't know.
Now I'm sure you guys could figure it out, but tricky. And then how do you cover it? I think that's where, like, Hennessy, when he developed his first backpacking hammock, trying to solve all of these problems, like, okay, how do I keep dry without, because that's one thing that I find funny about the evolution of hammock camping is we started off with the Hennessy and everybody loved it. It was a 9.5-foot hammock, and we're like, oh my gosh, what it's so huge, it's big, and oh my, it didn't take very long for us to be like, you know what, that's small,
Yeah.
and it's kind of uncomfortable. You got the
Yeah.
calf ridge problem, your ankles are swollen, you've got all these little issues. So our hammocks started getting bigger. 10-foot hammock, oh, that's pretty good. How about 11-foot hammock? What about a 12-foot hammock?
Yeah.
Anyway, the bigger you get, everything gets bigger. The tarp gets bigger. The
Yeah.
insulation gets bigger. All the tie outs and everything else. So there is definitely that pro and con. So certainly, as we've also seen, we've talked about the evolution of hammocks from a backpacking centric to just a car camping. Well, car camping, who cares? You can do whatever you want. 12-foot, like you see out here, great.
Yeah.
If you're doing a double kind of hammock, then yeah, get a hive, get something that you can fit together.
Right.
You still have the same issue though. If you've got health issues and whatnot, it's going to be tricky to find a hammock that's not
Yeah.
going to be
I'm-
squeezing. But Majestic,
I'm gonna say I actually have said it publicly. I'm a rooftop tenter.
yeah.
It's
I
been
don't
pretty.
know,
It's been
guy.
pretty awesome.
You're an overlander
we
now.
did launch the backcountry comforter
Oh,
the middle
yeah.
or late last year, and the one that we have in there is like 106 inch by like 98 inch.
Oh my gosh.
30-degree giant comforter, and
Great,
it's awesome.
though.
Yeah.
It's
So yeah,
being
that
able
has
to, like,
appealed.
it's like, I mean, it's literally like our bed at home. We
Yeah,
got 3.5 inches of memory foam, and
Well, if you're coming to an event like this, and to be honest, I've talked to several people at this camp, like, you know what, the privacy is a
Yeah.
big deal. And yes, can you get a huge tarp? Yes, you can go to the ground.
Right.
But it's tough at an event
Yeah.
like this where you're like, how do I change my clothes? I got to
know.
go over here. Especially some people, like we got a lot of women that are like, you know what, I need a little more privacy.
Yeah.
And this little tarp is not enough.
and we even have a
Right.
shower
Yeah,
attached to
attached.
the truck. So
That's amazing.
Wait.
So yeah, I think this is great. Or come to an event where you can have the privacy and the fun and sleep arrangements, and then have a hammock for relaxing next door. I mean, that's
Yeah.
sometimes we get caught up in that hammocks have to be about camping. Hammocks, at least in America, I mean, we started
Right.
off as just like, hey,
I'm
hanging out with
lounging.
my friends,
Yeah.
and that's still totally cool.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy coming to events like this, but when you're traveling 20 plus hours and your whole setup is like in a hammock, everything just feels like so much harder to deal with.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Well, when I flew out here, I mean, that was the trick. Like, I got to fit everything into, right? I had to fit everything into my carry-on. It's like, I'm packing like I'm going on a through hike.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And Mike can make it. But then, I'm compromising too. Like, I don't have all the privacy. I'm going to find a secluded spot, which is hard. So yeah. What you guys have done, I mean, it's funny, but at the same time, not funny.
It's funny.
But,
be comfortable.
But in all fairness, you know, UGQ started out, the very first thing we ever made was underquilts. And, you know, as the company grew and evolved, we started doing a lot more ground camping type products. And, you know, now we're really wanting to get more into the overlanding community. So, you know, we have great products for tents, great products for hammocks, and great products for overlanding. So, you know, us being able to really round ourselves out as a company and appeal to a lot more markets without compromising like the performance of the products themselves. Like you can order a Bandit with or without pad straps. You know, you can order it with or without the dynamic tension control, all the different footbox options, all the different widths. So it doesn't matter whether you're on the ground or in a rooftop tent or in a hammock, there's something for you that you can customize and build specifically for what you need, where, you know, doing something that's very specific to hammock camping or ground camping, you know, kind of pigeonholes you in. So, you know, as our company grew, we knew that we kind of had to adapt our products to a wide variety of uses, because, you know, we were getting contacted by people like, oh, can you make me this that does this? And it's like, sure, you know, but that, I love that creativity because it allows us to do things that have never been done before. You know, if we limit ourselves as a company to, okay, we only make top quilts, underquilts, and tarps and scullies, which our old logo used to say quilts, tarps, and scullies.
That's right.
It's like,
you know,
that's
but
all you sell.
We changed it to just UGQ Outdoor because we make more than that. And we're doing more and we're expanding more. So,
You should.
If that was the case, we couldn't have the book on the website. So it just wouldn't work.
Oh, well, we'll see. I think what you need now is, have you seen the Hammock Overland hammock stand?
No.
I think so.
So it swivels off of your rack.
What?
And it's got a little T or a little A-frame on one side, I think, is how they've got it set up. But
We
I've
need
seen
that
It's
because we
great.
want to have at least the display hammock.
Oh yeah, you just swing it out.
That would be
pop
awesome.
it down.
See,
Yeah, it
I'm
works.
learning
I
so much.
I should have read the book.
Exactly. We're getting it, and then you're gonna read it.
I need
You
to
need
learn
to be
how.
up to date.
But that's the thing is that
Yeah.
there's so many people coming out with so many new things that it's like, it's impossible to keep up with, especially because we're not just in the hammock community.
Yeah. no.
But it's my favorite community.
Yeah. It's
Well,
awesome.
and I'm also moving into the ADV or just motorcycle riding myself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, well, I want to transition to something that's a little different. And are people gonna make fun of me because I'm no longer backpacking?
It's
Like, whatever. I'm
going
having
to.
fun.
You gotta
I'm definitely
evolve.
gonna make fun of you.
You gotta grow and evolve.
As soon as I figure out who you are.
Oh my
Yeah, what's my
gosh.
name again?
Yeah.
That's great.
Eric,
That's
right?
great. It's close.
How many times have you been
Stop.
called Eric this weekend?
Actually, I think this is the first.
Oh, okay.
Eric. Why would
It
he be called
It
Eric?
seems like one of those names
It's a
where
natural.
gosh.
Yeah. I'll take it. Yeah.
I get called Brad and
Yeah, you get called Brad a lot.
I'm like, or Jack.
Yeah,
hey,
or
you.
Jack.
Or, oh, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. All right. Well,
He's got a Q&A. We were lucky
yeah,
enough to get on his.
Well, he's got
I'm
some
just-
time, but
Okay.
yeah, he's a super important person, so I got to get him back on his way.
Yes.
Derek Hansen, The Ultimate Hang.
Get the book.
Where can they
Yeah.
find this book?
Well, we're gonna link it.
How can
of
they
course.
order one?
Great question. You know what I'm going to do if this is okay on your podcast?
Definitely.
So
well,
those of you or those that hear this podcast, if you mention Hang Kong 25, send me an email. I will send you a signed copy.
What?
Right? You can buy it from me directly. Otherwise, the only other place to get
This
it
is
is
awesome.
from Amazon.com. You can buy it, like a regular book. That's really where you get the book. But for
That's
those
the
that are
lame
listening
way.
to this, Hang Kong, I've got a box that I'm sending to people who are Hang Kong and have heard this
I love
podcast.
it.
So.
Awesome.
you're going to be signing a lot of copies.
Here we go. Let's put him to work.
Well, thank you.
I can't wait.
Thank you so much
Hey,
for
man,
this time.
I appreciate you coming
Yes,
on.
thank you so
and
much.
we're going to go enjoy the rest of this event. And
do it.
You got your Q&A, so keep
Q&A. We got some
Q&A.
Wayne being down here.
We got Florida. Let's do it.
Exactly.
All right, man. Thanks. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too.
Yep.
All right.